Hello guys! So the other week I was in London and on the way back I found a book, and from the title you can probably guess what book it was, but it was this book. Woo! Woo! Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. And I thought, well, hey, I may as well buy it, so I did and I read it. And after I had read it, I was kind of left with this weird feeling because for me Harry Potter is like my childhood. I watched all the movies when I was little and I read the books about 7 years ago or so, 7, 8, I don't remember, and I loved them. It was what got me into reading and they're just such a huge part of me that I of course had to read this book. I haven't actually been so hyped about this book ever since I knew it was coming out because I was kind of skeptical, and I think being skeptical actually made me enjoy it more than I would have if I had had big expectations, because this book was fairly, I'm not gonna call it uninteresting, but in comparison to the other 7 books, this didn't really have much to offer. I think part of the reason that it's not like the others is of course because it is a sequel that wasn't planned from the beginning, and because this is supposed to be seen as a stage show, so of course the reading experience won't be as good as the experience you would get from watching it on a theater stage. But basically I ended up writing a bunch of notes to this, and I have some cons and I've got some pros, and then I've got something in between that I didn't really know what to do with, because I think some of the things in this book is really about what you like as a person. Of course a lot of things are like that, but specifically for this book I feel like it's either you will like it or you won't. But yeah, let's start with the cons, because you should always start with the bad things first. So basically one of my first cons is this story is very simple, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like it is for Harry Potter, because Harry Potter for me has always been this very layered story. So when we have in the beginning of the first book, we have Harry Potter struggle from going to being this normal boy who was bullied by his family, by people at his school, to being this amazing wizard who suddenly knew magic, and he went to this wizarding school where people tried to kill him even though he was just a normal boy, or so he thought. And we had the drama with his friends, with Malfoy, who I'm not gonna call his enemy, with his actual enemy Voldemort, with his place in the world, with the legend surrounding him. And it's very complex, even from the first book. I feel like this one was very much just the struggle of Albus. And kind of, it of course had the conflict with Voldemort's child, which I'll get into later, but other than those two things, it didn't really have too much to it. But again, I feel as a stage show, it's important not to have too much, because it's different what you can convey on a stage rather than in words where you have like unlimited amount of pages. Because a stage show, of course, I feel like a lot of children are going to watch this and they wouldn't be able to sit through 8 hours of stage play. Now that I'm talking about the books, the other thing that I found kind of lacking, because this is of course written as a script, is that the writing style isn't as amazing as the first Harry Potter books. Because for me, one of the few things that really got me hooked on Harry Potter was the way that it was written. It's a very simple writing style that J.K. Rowling has, yet it's still very complex, so it's easy to read, yet you still get all the emotions, all the complex storylines. While this as a script, it's not really, you have the people, what they say and sometimes what they do, but nothing more. You won't get a Albus was feeling down because blah blah, you'll just have he frowned or something. So you'll kind of have to guess most of it, which of course also is kind of like interpreting the story, but it's not as full, it's not as, there's not as much meat on the bone as in the first few books, if you get what I mean. Going to the villain of the story, like the real villain, which wasn't like Albus's loneliness and stuff like that, which of course also is discussed in this book, but Voldemort's child, I can't say that name for the life of me. Voldemort's child, she was interesting. My problem with her is she was much more interesting before she was revealed to be Voldemort's child. And it was kind of obvious, like, when she started acting like the villain, and all the setup with Scorpius being rumored to be Voldemort's child, it was kind of obvious that she was. But I felt like her character kind of just fell when that was revealed, because it made her seem more dependent on the previous stories, where it would have been really nice to have something completely different, to make the story more unique and be able to stand on its own, because it is very dependent of having read like the other 7 books. While I think if the villain had been someone completely different, the impact would have been much bigger, especially for people who aren't really into Harry Potter. I think some people may disagree with me on this, but I really feel like she should have been something else. That's not to say that the villain was entirely bad. I feel like it could have been so much worse. But I just feel like from all the villains we have in Harry Potter, even though it is kind of fairy tale-y because Voldemort is the Dark Lord and all that, I feel like she could have been much more interesting. I did like that it was a woman though. It was different and I liked that. My last complaint, which really ticked me off in the end and kind of left like a sour taste in my mouth, was the completely pointless romance in the end of the story. This story would have been so much better and more complete in my mind if the romance just hadn't been there. Like the whole Scorpius Rose thing, it was so irrelevant, and I feel like it kind of came out of nowhere, yet it didn't. It was just like, it would have been fine if the teasing had just been there with the few things that they planted throughout the story, so that it would have been more open for interpretation rather than just have Scorpius actually be in love and try to make a relationship between him and Rose happen. And did Al fall in love with someone? I don't even remember. But yeah, that was just pointless and I really didn't like it. That's like the one thing that I would have completely gotten rid of in this story if I had to choose one thing. Now for the stuff that I find is neither a con nor a pro. The obvious thing to talk about when talking about The Cursed Child is the fact that time travel is a big thing in this story. And I think time travel is kind of, not a controversial topic, but it's a thing where a bunch of people are gonna hate it and some people aren't. I don't mind time travel as long as it's done very well. I think that Harry Potter and The Cursed Child did a good job with the time travel. Of course, we had already had the setup from the 3rd book, which is nice, so that time travel wasn't just completely out of nowhere. But I feel like a bunch of people are gonna have a problem with it. The thing is about time travel in this story is that it doesn't... It's not really as impactful as I have wanted it to be. It kind of just told you the same things that time travel stories always tell you. That when you go back in time and change something you think will work out for the better, you just fuck something else up. And that's kind of the point of it. Like, they go back in time and suddenly they, and with they I mean Scorpius, end up in this dystopia world. Which, I mean, it's a very impactful thing to show you that you can't just go back and change stuff. But one, we don't have time travel in the real world, and we all know that we can't go back and change things that we regret, which is why we should always live to do the best we can so that we won't have any regrets in the future. But yeah, I feel like that's going to be a problem with a lot of people. I didn't mind it because I think it was done quite well. It could have been done better, definitely. But I don't think it completely flopped on the time travel front. Another thing that is kind of, I don't really know how to categorize this, which is why it's in between, but the character of Albus, our main character, because this is a stage show, I expect his character to be more fleshed out on the stage, because there is going to be a person playing him, showing emotion. But in the script, as we read it, I feel like some of Albus's actions and the way he talks and just the way he is as a person isn't completely justified. I think this is mainly because we don't see a lot of his past, so we don't see the like kind of relationship he has with Harry. But I feel like he's kind of lacking as a main character. There's something about him which is just kind of meh, if you know what I mean. It's like he's not, I want to say strong, but he's not that powerful of a character that I just need to know how he deals with stuff, because I just read it and I didn't really care too much about him, which is really bad for a main character because it's his story we're following. So you should make us care. But then again, stage show, I imagine the stage show would be so much more different. But yeah, Albus's character, I really like to know what other people think though. So comment below what you think of Albus's character, because I feel like there might be split opinions about this. We also have a bunch of new secondary characters introduced. We have like, what was the guy's name? The one that got killed? We have him, and we have some new like, a few new background people. Not too many, but just a few. And I think while none of them were fleshed out again, it actually kind of worked, because we had the impact of some random side character getting killed off, which is of course very impactful for the two boys who are there witnessing it. But then again, they're not like super interesting, because in Harry Potter, again, one of the things that makes Harry Potter such a great read is that all of the background characters, they have a personality that shines through. You are immediately aware of how this person feels about this and that, and you can really get into the characters, which is why there's so much fan fiction, I feel like. And when you have like a fan fiction about like a secondary character, it's still really good, and it makes sense because J.K. Rowling has put so much effort in making each character so alive. And again, as a script, this doesn't really do that kind of writing justice. But again, stage show. That's all I'm stressing here. Stage show. Lastly, a thing that I don't know if it should be a pro or a con is the very fast year skipping in the beginning of the story. Like, we had Albus getting sorted into Slytherin, which was, by the way, a very nice decision, a very good thing that made me very happy. But we have that, and then we have like 2 pages, then he's in the 2nd year, and 2 pages, then he's in the 3rd year, and 2 pages, then he's in the 4th year. And I was just like, wait, this is going really, really fast, what the hell? So that was, for reading that like in one go, that was kind of weird, because I feel like we were missing a bunch of development that could have been shown there to like show how much he starts distancing himself from his father, and we kind of saw that, but we saw it, but I didn't feel like we had like a reason why he started distancing himself from his father. So while we saw that he started talking less to Harry and he was like more isolated, we still didn't see why. It was kind of like it's just because, kind of, and then we kind of get some hints here and there, but still, I felt like they could have been like just 2 pages longer for each year. But maybe that's just me. Now into the good stuff, because there are good stuff about this book. The first major thing that I really, really, really liked about this book was Scorpius. Scorpius was an amazing character. He was just such a fun read, especially because most of this book is just dialogue, and he's just funny. He's a witty character. He's so precious. I really, the entire time I just wanted to take him out of the book and give him a hug. He was so adorable. And how they made such an amazing character. Like, he was a main character, but he wasn't a point of view character most of the time. He was so amazing. I feel like I don't even know how to describe how much I love that character. Like, I will read this again just to focus on him as a character. He was so amazing. And everything bad that happened to that boy, he didn't deserve it. Let's just be honest. He got bullied for no good reason. But he was amazing. Let's leave it at that. Another good thing was the tie-in and kind of the end to the rivalry / conflict / whatever the hell it was between Draco and Harry, because they didn't really have a resolved relationship by the end of the 7th book, sorry. They were kind of just it was very vague what happened between them, kind of what their relationship was by the end of the book. It was very much up to interpretation. But through this book we have them bonding over saving their children, which was really, really nice, because I always wanted Harry and Draco to be on each other's good side. So while they weren't enemies nor really good friends, I wanted them to be kind of able to speak to each other without trying to kill each other, as they did try one time in this book. But yeah, that was a nice touch, and I feel like the book really benefited from it, as well as it being not confusing for anyone who might, for some reason, see or read this as their first Harry Potter experience. The book also has a very, very clear message. It has this clear message about how friendship is important, how you shouldn't try to force people to do things until you understand their perspective and their situation, and you shouldn't try to control people even though you love them. So even though you think it's for the best what you're doing, you should really take their perspective into account, because you might be hurting them more than you are helping them, as is in Harry's case when he tried to separate him and Scorpius. With him I mean Albus. I thought it was very clear, and again, for children this might be a very good thing to learn, because they can very easily think that what they think is right because that's what they know. They think, well, I see it this way, so it must be the right way, but they don't understand that other people have different perspectives and might see another truth because people are different. So yeah, I thought that was really nice, and the resolvement, that's not a word, the resolve between Harry and Albus in the end was very sweet when they went to, what's his name? Cedric's grave. I thought that was a really nice way to end it, because it shows Harry as a more vulnerable character, which is my last pro, like extreme pro, which is Harry's character, because I feel like sometimes he is just portrayed or remembered as this hero. And of course, he's much more than that. He's a more vulnerable person than a strong hero. He has faults, he has anger problems as portrayed in the 5th book, if you remember. And that really shines through in this book, because we see him not from his own perspective, where of course what he sees is like the truth, but from his son's perspective, where he's just a really shitty father. And I like that we are reminded that Harry is not a perfect person. He has flaws, he is human. And that's really nice, because there are a lot of people, at least a lot of my friends, don't really like Harry because he has those flaws, but I think that's very important for a main character, and that's one of the reasons, again, why I really like Harry Potter, because we have a main character who has these amazing traits. He's a very kind person, he's smart, but he's not overly intelligent, and he needs his friends to help him, yet he's still able to stand on his own. But he also has these problematic, or he has flaws. He tends not to think straight when he gets hot-blooded, and he tends to act very much out of his own personal gain. So he'll see something, he'll be stricken with like grief or anger or something, and he'll just act immediately without thinking. And I feel like this book really did well with Harry's character, even though he wasn't the main character. So yeah, I really loved that. I feel like other people might have really started to hate him because there were times where he really did get on my nerves, but in like a good way. It was like every time he did something that I disagreed with, I liked it more, because he seemed so human, and everything he did for his son because he loved his son, but he didn't know how to help him because, as he said, he didn't really have a good father figure. I mean, he has Hagrid, which I feel like is kind of overlooked from his own perspective, but yeah, he didn't have that fatherly figure, so he's learning for the first time how to be a father, and where he had it easy with his 2 other children, Albus just happened to be different, and while that's not a bad thing, that's just difficult for him to deal with. So that was really nice. In general, my thoughts on this book was that it was very enjoyable. However, it felt, as I was reading, more like a fan fiction than anything else. It felt like I had found a super fantastic fan fiction that I would recommend to all of my friends, but still, it wasn't like canon material. So yeah, I enjoyed it, but it didn't have the same Harry Potter feel that I get from reading the original 7 books. But yeah, you can tell me if you disagree or agree with that. I feel like a lot of people is actually gonna hate this book for some reason. Mainly because of the time travel, I guess, but... As I've said 7,000 times at this point, I really feel like this story works a whole lot better as a stage show than it does as a book. Of course, that's also how it's intended, so I really want to see it. I don't think I can actually get to see it, but I'm expecting a DVD to be released at some point. So I might have to see that. But yeah, if you liked anything that I have to say, please leave a thumbs up on this video and leave in the comments below what you thought of this book, because again, I feel like it has many divided opinions, even though I haven't actually read any reviews, seen any reviews, or seen anyone's opinion. But I have this feeling. And yeah, subscribe to me if you want to see more of me. Although I don't really do many book reviews, I do reviews of manga chapters such as One Piece, Haikyuu, and Shokugeki no Soma, also known as Food Wars. So if you are into those as well as Harry Potter, please subscribe to me, and until next time, bye!